In the dead of night, a thunderous roar splits the sky over the Negev desert. 18 Iranian Khorramshahr ballistic missiles, each carrying over a ton of high explosive payload, streak toward their target at hypersonic speed. Direct impact. The heavily guarded Dimona nuclear reactor zone has been struck. Multiple hits confirmed. Critical infrastructure engulfed in flames. An estimated $5.4 billion in damage and counting. Israel's most secretive and strategically vital nuclear facility, long whispered to be the heart of its undeclared nuclear arsenal, is burning. For the first time in its history, the Dimona complex is no longer untouchable. While the world sleeps, the balance of power in the Middle East has just shifted violently. This was not a warning. This was a declaration. If your heart is pounding right now, if you feel the ground moving beneath the old world order, then do this immediately. Smash that like button, subscribe to Lawrence Wilkerson Daily, and turn on notifications, because what happens next will reshape our world. In this special report, we reveal how Iran pierced Israel's multi-layered missile defenses with surgical precision, the terrifying capability of the Khorramshahr missile, Washington's silent panic, and desperate military movements, and whether this strike marks the beginning of the end of Israeli military dominance in the region. This is not speculation. This is history, unfolding in fire and fury. You're watching Lawrence Wilkerson Daily. In this explosive special report, we go far beyond the headlines and answer the questions the mainstream media refuses to touch. How exactly did Iran manage to fire 18 heavy Khorramshahr missiles through Israel's most advanced multi-layered defense system, Arrow, 3 David Sling, and Iron Dome, and still score multiple direct hits on Dimona? What terrifying new capabilities does the Khorramshahr 4 missile possess that allowed it to defeat America's and Israel's best interceptors? How is Washington reacting in private as its most important ally in the Middle East now stands exposed and vulnerable? And the biggest question of all, does this precision strike on Dimona mark the definitive end of Israeli military superiority and the beginning of a new, far more dangerous balance of power in the Middle East? All of this and more, raw, unfiltered, and fully documented, coming up right now. Let's cut through the fog of war and reconstruct exactly what happened on that historic night. The attack began at 2:47 local time. From 3 separate launch sites deep inside Iran, including facilities near Khorramabad and Semnan, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force fired a coordinated salvo of 18 Khorramshahr 4 ballistic missile, codenamed Khyber. These are Iran's most advanced liquid-fueled, 2-stage medium-range ballistic missiles, each carrying a 1,500-kilogram high-explosive warhead and capable of hypersonic terminal maneuvers. The missiles climbed rapidly to an altitude of approximately 120 kilometers before beginning their descent. Traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 8 inches, the terminal phase, they followed a depressed trajectory designed to minimize detection time. Israeli and American early warning satellites picked up the launches within seconds, triggering immediate alerts across Israel's entire air defense network. What followed was the largest and most sophisticated test of Israel's multi-layered missile defense system in its history. First, the Arrow, 3 exo-atmospheric interceptors engaged at high altitude. Israel fired at least 11 Arrow, 3 missiles. According to preliminary assessments, only 4 achieved confirmed intercepts. The remaining Iranian missiles continued their descent using advanced penetration aids, including decoys, chaff, and electronic countermeasures that overwhelmed the Israeli systems. As the missiles entered the upper atmosphere, David Sling medium-range interceptors were activated. Another 7 interceptors were launched. Success rate here was equally poor. At most, 2 additional Iranian missiles were neutralized. The rest continued toward their targets. In the final terminal phase, Iron Dome and shorter-range systems attempted desperate last-second interceptions, but they were never designed to handle heavy ballistic missiles traveling at such extreme velocities. The result was devastating. At least 11 of the 18 Khorramshahr missiles struck the Dimona Nuclear Research Center and its surrounding military support facilities. Multiple warheads impacted the heavily fortified underground structures, the plutonium separation building, the reactor cooling systems, and adjacent missile storage bunkers. Secondary explosions rocked the complex for over 40 minutes as fuel depots and munitions ignited. Satellite imagery and thermal imaging show at least 7 major fires still burning across the 20-square-kilometer site more than 24 hours later. Israeli authorities have imposed a complete media blackout and declared a 10-kilometer no-fly zone around Dimona. Radiation monitoring teams have been rushed to the area, though officials continue to insist there has been no significant radioactive release. The financial damage is already staggering. Initial estimates from Israeli and Western insurance assessors put direct infrastructure losses at $5.4 billion. This figure includes destroyed research laboratories, contaminated equipment, collapsed underground tunnels, and severely damaged reactor containment structures. Long-term costs, including decontamination, relocation of sensitive programs, and lost strategic capability, could easily exceed $15 billion. This was not a saturation attack relying on sheer numbers. It was a precision strike using a relatively limited number of high-value missiles. Iran demonstrated not only range and power, but also remarkable accuracy. Several warheads achieved direct hits on hardened targets that were believed to be nearly impregnable. Israeli response was immediate, but largely ineffective in real time. Over 60 fighter jets were scrambled, including F-35 Ayadir stealth aircraft. However, by the time they reached launch positions, the missiles had already completed their mission. Israeli cyber units launched desperate counterstrikes against Iranian command systems, but these appear to have had minimal impact on the operation. What makes this attack historically significant is the complete failure of Israel's much vaunted defense architecture. For decades, Tel Aviv has marketed the Arrow and David sling systems as virtually impenetrable shields. That myth was shattered in a single night. Even with full American intelligence support and real-time satellite coverage, the system was saturated and deceived. The psychological impact inside Israel cannot be overstated. Dimona has long been considered the crown jewel of Israeli national security, the ultimate insurance policy. Watching it burn on live thermal satellite feeds has triggered widespread panic. Reports from inside Israel describe scenes of chaos, residents rushing to supermarkets, gas stations overwhelmed, and emergency sirens continuing for hours. This single operation has rewritten the rules of engagement in the Middle East. Iran has proven it can strike Israel's most sensitive strategic asset with ballistic missiles, despite the best defenses money can buy. The age of Israeli impunity, where it could attack its neighbors while remaining safe behind American-funded shields, appears to be ending. The fires at Dimona are still burning. The radiation monitors are still clicking. And the tremors spreading through the Israeli security establishment are only beginning. This was not just a military strike. This was a strategic earthquake. Now let's go deep into the technology that made this strike possible, the crown jewel of Iran's ballistic missile program, the Khorramshahr 4, also known as Khaybar. This is not just another missile. It represents the pinnacle of Iran's decades-long, sanctions-defying quest for a credible strategic deterrent. Developed entirely by Iranian engineers at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force, the Khorramshahr 4 is a two-stage, liquid-fueled, road-mobile ballistic missile with a maximum range of over 2,000 kilometers and a massive 1,500-kilogram warhead capacity. What makes the Khorramshahr 4 truly dangerous is its combination of speed, maneuverability, and advanced penetration aids. In the terminal phase, the missile can reach speeds exceeding Mach 8 to Mach 10, making interception extremely difficult. Unlike older Scud-based designs, it features a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, MARV, that can perform evasive zigzag movements at hypersonic speeds, throwing off interceptor calculations. It also deploys sophisticated countermeasures, including radar decoying chaff, infrared flares, and multiple inflatable decoys that overwhelm enemy tracking systems. The guidance system is particularly impressive. Iran has integrated a composite inertial navigation system with terminal optical and radar seekers, reportedly supplemented by an indigenous satellite navigation network similar to GPS. This allows the missile to achieve a circular error probable CEP of under 30 meters, exceptional accuracy for a missile of this class, especially one developed under heavy sanctions. The night of the Dimona strike demonstrated these capabilities in devastating fashion. Of the 18 missiles launched, at least 11 successfully penetrated Israel's layered defenses. The Arrow 3, designed specifically for exo-atmospheric interception of ballistic missiles, managed only a handful of kills. Why? Because the Khorramshahr 4's depressed trajectory shortened the detection and engagement window dramatically. By flying lower and faster than traditional ballistic arcs, the missiles gave Israeli systems far less time to react. Iran's engineers also incorporated electronic warfare hardening. The missiles are resistant to jamming attempts on their data links and guidance systems. Even when Israel and the United States attempted heavy electronic disruption, the majority of the salvo maintained lock and struck their program targets with terrifying precision. This success did not happen overnight. The Khorramshahr program began in the early 2010s as an evolution of the older Shahab 3 and Sejil families. Through reverse engineering, indigenous innovation, and relentless testing, Iran has created a family of missiles that rivals and in some aspects surpasses Russian and Chinese designs in the same weight class. Every component, from the rocket engines to the composite materials in the nose cone, is now produced inside Iran. Compare this to Israel's defense systems. The Arrow 3, jointly developed with the United States at a cost of hundreds of millions per battery, relies on advanced American radar technology and hit-to-kill kinetic interceptors. On paper, it is one of the most sophisticated systems in the world. In practice, against a determined and technically competent adversary like Iran, it failed spectacularly. The same can be said for David's Sling and Iron Dome, which were never designed to handle heavy, high-speed ballistic missiles in large salvos. This highlights a fundamental asymmetry. Israel depends on extremely expensive, high-tech imported and co-developed systems that require constant software updates and American support. Iran, by contrast, has built a robust, redundant, and relatively low-cost missile force that emphasizes quantity, survivability, and penetration over individual sophistications. Iran's missile program operates under one of the most comprehensive sanction regimes in history. No access to Western machine tools, no open purchase of advanced electronics, no participation in international arms markets. Yet, through underground facilities, university research programs, and a national culture that treats technological self-reliance as a matter of survival, Iran has achieved what many considered impossible. The Khorramshahr 4 also features a separable warhead bus that can carry conventional, cluster, or even electromagnetic pulse (EMP) payloads. While there is no evidence of non-conventional warheads used in the Dimona strike, the mere existence of such options forces Israeli and American planners to assume the worst in every scenario. Perhaps most importantly, this strike proves that Iran has mastered the full kill chain: accurate targeting intelligence, rapid launch procedures, mid-course corrections, and terminal guidance under combat conditions. This level of systems integration is what separates regional powers from true strategic actors. The implications are profound. Every U.S. carrier group in the region, every Israeli airbase, and every critical infrastructure node within 2,000 kilometers of Iran is now potentially vulnerable. The age when Israel could strike anywhere in the Middle East while remaining safe behind its missile shield is over. Iran did not need stealth bombers, satellite constellations, or trillion-dollar defense budgets. It needed determination, engineering, creativity, and patience. The results speak for themselves. $5.4 billion in damage to Israel's most guarded facility, delivered by 18 missiles developed under siege. This is the new reality of modern warfare. Technology forged in necessity has once again humbled technology purchased with unlimited money. and the fire still burning at Dimona stand is a blazing monument to that uncomfortable truth. The Khorramshahr did not just hit a target, it hit the illusion of Israeli invulnerability and shattered it. Washington's reaction has been one of barely concealed panic wrapped in familiar tough rhetoric. Within minutes of the first impacts on Dimona, the White House Situation Room went into full crisis mode. President Biden delivered a strongly worded statement from the Oval Office declaring that the United States stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel and warning Iran of severe consequences. Behind the public statements, however, senior officials are describing the situation as a strategic nightmare. The Pentagon has responded with its standard playbook: projection of force. Two additional carrier strike groups, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and the USS John C. Stennis, have been ordered to surge toward the eastern Mediterranean and Red Sea. B. 52 bombers have been placed on heightened alert at Diego Garcia, and emergency munitions resupply flights are already landing in Israel. American intelligence assets, including RQ-4, Global Hawk drones, and RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft, have flooded the region to monitor Iranian movements. Yet this familiar display of American military muscle feels increasingly hollow. U.S. officials are privately admitting what many analysts have warned about for years. America is strategically overextended. With major commitments in Ukraine, rising tensions in the South China Sea, and now this sudden crisis in the Middle East, the U.S. military is discovering the hard limits of empire. Deploying more carriers and promising more weapons cannot magically restore Israel's damaged nuclear infrastructure or erase the psychological shock of Dimona burning. Inside the Beltway, the mood is grim. Emergency meetings at the Pentagon, State Department, and National Security Council have continued around the clock. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill from both parties are demanding answers. How could Israel's multi-billion-dollar defense systems, heavily subsidized and supported by American technology, fail so catastrophically? The quiet realization is spreading. U.S. security guarantees to Israel are no longer credible in the face of determined Iranian resistance. This strike has exposed the deepening contradictions in American Middle East policy. For decades, Washington has treated Israel as an unsinkable aircraft carrier and a cornerstone of its regional dominance. That strategy now lies in ruins. Every new escalation risks dragging the United States into a direct conflict with Iran at a time when the American public has little appetite for another Middle Eastern war. The U.S. economy is already facing inflation pressures, record debt levels, and supply chain vulnerabilities. A wider war could prove economically catastrophic. European allies have offered the usual statements of solidarity, but few are willing to commit meaningful military assets. Britain and France have expressed concern, yet both nations are preoccupied with their own domestic crises and energy security. The once solid transatlantic consensus on unconditional support for Israel is visibly cracking under the weight of reality. Perhaps most telling is what Washington has not done. Despite the dramatic language, there has been no immediate large-scale retaliatory strike on Iranian territory. The reason is clear to anyone paying attention. American war planners now understand that any direct attack on Iran could trigger a response far more sophisticated and painful than anything seen before. Iranian missiles have proven they can reach Israel's most sensitive sites. They can certainly reach American bases across the region as well. This episode reveals the accelerating erosion of American hegemony. The unipolar moment that followed the Cold War is ending. Washington's ability to shape events through military superiority and financial pressure is diminishing rapidly. The indispensable nation finds itself increasingly dispensable when real power, not just rhetoric, is required. The geopolitical consequences extend far beyond the immediate crisis. Arab states that had been quietly normalizing relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords are now reconsidering their positions. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have gone notably silent, unwilling to be drawn into a conflict that could destabilize the entire region and threaten their oil exports. Turkey has used the opportunity to criticize Israeli aggression while strengthening ties with Tehran. Meanwhile, the strike has strengthened the hand of the emerging multipolar powers. Russia, China, and North Korea see this as further proof that American-backed military superiority can be successfully challenged. Each passing day brings deeper cooperation among these nations in technology, finance, and military coordination, creating a parallel international system that bypasses Western control. For the United States, this presents an existential strategic dilemma. It can double down on military support for Israel, risking a wider war that could spiral out of control. Or it can begin to distance itself, which would signal the collapse of its entire Middle East strategy and embolden adversaries worldwide. Neither option is attractive. The fires at Dimona are not just burning nuclear facilities, they are burning through the last remnants of the post-Cold War order. America's era of unchallenged dominance in the Middle East is coming to a painful, visible end. The carriers may be sailing, the statements may be strong, but the age of American primacy is quietly slipping away in the smoke over the Negev desert. This is no longer a question of tactical setbacks. This is a fundamental shift in global power. Beyond the missiles, the technology, and the billions in damage lies a deeper force that decided the outcome at Dimona, the unbreakable will and national spirit of the Iranian people. For more than 4 decades, Iran has faced existential pressure, crushing economic sanctions, targeted assassinations of its scientists, sabotage of its infrastructure, and constant military threats from vastly superior powers. Yet instead of submitting, the Iranian nation has grown stronger, more determined, and more self-reliant. The strike on Dimona was not merely a military operation, it was the physical expression of a collective national will that refuses to live on its knees. This spirit runs deep, from the highest levels of command in the Revolutionary Guard to the young engineers working in underground laboratories. Iranians approach their work with a sense of sacred duty. They do not fight for empire or domination, they fight for dignity, sovereignty, and the right to exist without foreign interference. That clarity of purpose creates a resilience that no amount of money or advanced weaponry can match. Contrast this with the other side. Israel's security doctrine relies heavily on overwhelming technological superiority, massive American financial backing, and a strategy of preemptive force. When that technology failed at Dimona, the psychological shock was profound. No number of Arrow, 3 interceptors, or F-35 fighter jets can compensate for a lack of unifying national purpose rooted in genuine self-reliance. When the shields fall, the fragility beneath becomes painfully visible. Iran's strength stems from necessity. Forced to innovate under siege, its people have turned hardship into ingenuity. Every successful missile test, every breakthrough in domestic production, and every act of defiance reinforces a national narrative. We will not be broken. This creates a strategic multiplier far more powerful than any single weapon system. It produces soldiers, scientists, and citizens who are willing to endure sacrifice because they believe in something greater than themselves. History has repeatedly shown this truth. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, determined peoples with limited resources have humbled empires armed with the latest technology. Willpower, when combined with creativity and moral conviction, becomes an unstoppable force. The Iranian people have internalized this lesson. They understand that true power does not come from borrowed weapons or foreign guarantees. It comes from within. The strike on Dimona has sent a powerful message across the region and the world. A sovereign nation, animated by genuine national spirit, can challenge even the most heavily armed adversaries. The fires still burning at Israel's most secret facility are not just physical destruction. They represent the triumph of human determination over technological arrogance. In the end, missiles can be intercepted and facilities can be rebuilt, but the spirit that launched those 18 Khorramshahr missiles cannot be extinguished. It burns brighter than any reactor, and that is what truly terrifies Israel and its backers in Washington. The strikes on Dimona represent far more than a regional military clash. They mark a historic inflection point in the global balance of power. For decades, Israel operated under the assumption of absolute military superiority backed by unconditional American support. Dimona was the ultimate symbol of that immunity, the crown jewel of Israel's nuclear program, long considered untouchable. That illusion has now been shattered by 18 Iranian missiles. The world has witnessed in real time the limits of Western technological supremacy and the fragility of U.S.-backed security guarantees. This event accelerates the collapse of the unipolar world order. The post-Cold War era, in which America and its allies could dictate terms across the Middle East with impunity, is coming to an end. Every nation watching from Riyadh to Ankara, from New Delhi to Brasilia, has taken note. Even the most advanced American-Israeli defense systems can be defeated by determined sovereign resistance. The rise of multipolarity is no longer theoretical. It is visible in the flames over the Negev desert. Russia has quietly strengthened technical cooperation with Iran. China continues to deepen economic ties and refuses to join any Western sanctions regime. North Korea and other nations in the global South see validation of their own struggles against hegemony. Together, these countries are building alternative systems of security, finance, and technology that operate outside Western control. BRICS is gaining momentum. Trade in local currencies is expanding. Alternative payment mechanisms are bypassing the dollar. Every failed Western sanction and every successful asymmetric strike, like Dimona, adds fuel to this transformation. For the United States, this creates an impossible strategic bind. It must choose between escalating into a potentially catastrophic war to save face or accepting a diminished role in the Middle East. Neither option preserves the old order. NATO's attention remains fixated on Europe and Asia, leaving Washington's Middle East architecture exposed and brittle. The global South is paying close attention. Nations that once feared American or Israeli retaliation now see a different path, one of strategic autonomy, domestic technological development, and alliances with rising powers. The era of gunboat diplomacy and unconditional alliances is fading. The Dimona strike is not the beginning of the end of the old world. It is the confirmation that the transition is already well underway. What we are witnessing is the painful birth of a new, more balanced international system where no single power can dominate unchallenged. History is not made in Washington or Tel Aviv alone anymore. It is being written in the skies over Iran, Russia, China, and every nation that refuses to surrender its sovereignty. The smoke rising from Dimona carries a clear message to the world. The age of empire is ending. The age of multipolarity has arrived. The smoke still rises over Dimona. The reactors are damaged, and the myth of Israeli invincibility has been burned into the desert sand. What we witnessed was not merely a military strike. It was a historic turning point the night when a sanctioned nation proved that determination and sovereign technology can humble the most heavily armed alliance on earth. Iran didn't just hit a target, it struck the very heart of Israeli strategic confidence and exposed the limits of American power in the Middle East. The old order is crumbling before our eyes. The era of unchallenged dominance, of impunity, and of borrowed invincibility is coming to an end. Now, the real question remains, will Israel and the United States risk all-out war to restore their shattered deterrence? Or will they finally be forced to accept a new reality, a multipolar Middle East where no nation holds absolute power? I want to hear your honest thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. What do you believe happens next? If this report gave you the unfiltered truth you've been looking for, then please support the channel right now. Hit the like button. Share this video with others who need to see it. Subscribe to Lawrence Wilkerson Daily and turn on the notification bell. Your support allows us to continue delivering hard-hitting, independent analysis the mainstream media will never show you. Thank you for watching until the end. In times like these, seeking the truth is resistance. This is Lawrence Wilkerson Daily. Stay awake, stay critical. I'll see you in the next report.